Good evening, everyone. We've got quite a bit to get through this evening, so we might make a start now right on 6:30, and I'm sure there'll be a few more that'll join us over the next couple of minutes. So welcome to tonight's update session. I'm just got some information there on the screen, which we'll just ask you to have a bit of a read through, but we've got some really great guests joining us this evening. So Ross Biden, CEO of Sports New South Wales, is going to provide an update on the COVID situation and how that's impacting our community. So we'll get him to kick off in a few minutes. We have Millie Reid online from the Australian Sports Foundation. So she's the sport fundraising manager. And I met Millie a couple of weeks ago online, and we had a great chat about some of the initiatives that the Australian Sports Foundation is doing. So I think that'll be a really great update for everyone to hear. We have Kimmy Lau, who's the Community Relations Advisor for Kohl's, and she's going to give us an update on some activities that Kohl's is doing, including the new round of grants that will be opening up very shortly. And then I have a bit of information just to share with you of an update from Little Athletics New South Wales. Before I start, though, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land that we are all upon. For me, in northwest Sydney, that's the Darug people, and I pay my respect to elders past, present and emerging, and welcome all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. If everyone could stay on mute throughout this session, that'll just help with avoiding any distractions. We do have a lot of people coming online, and I can see they continue to tick over there. So if you could turn off your videos, that would also just assist with our connectivity. If you haven't already, then jump into the view function and select speaker view, and that'll help bring up the people that are speaking at the time and give you the best quality presentation. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat during the night, so you can see the chat function at the bottom of your screen, and we will endeavour to answer those. However, there is a lot going on tonight, as I said, so we may come back to you with those answers in an email over the coming days. And I know that Kimmy and Millie are both more than happy to assist in providing answers to those questions as well. Remember, what you do put in the chat can be seen by everyone, and just a reminder that we are recording this session. So with that, I will hand over to Ross, CEO of Sport New South Wales, and who can give us a bit of an update on the current situation we're in. Thanks, Ross, for joining us.
Thanks, Rebecca. Yes, welcome everybody. Just to give you a bit of an update, we haven't been sitting idly by once we're all in lockdown and all this uncertainty. It was evident very early on that this current lockdown was going to have a substantial impact on the sporting sector, and we needed to take some prompt action where we could to try and influence the situation. And so last week we brought together and we had discussions with most of the major winter sports in an effort to try and discuss what went right last year, what went wrong last year in the return to play, and see whether we can come up with some recommendations that we could take back to the Office of Sport and also take to the Minister of Health and the new Minister of Sport, Natalie Ward. So last Monday, a week ago, we had a couple of meetings. First with, we had some meetings with some of the smaller sports, talking to them on how they were going with this current lockdown and how they felt and was having a big financial impact, et cetera, et cetera. And then later on in the day, we had a meeting with 14 of the major sports CEOs, the winter sports, and talked to them about what they felt went right, what they would be recommending if they could, et cetera, et cetera. The major aim is to ensure that we had when this lockdown ends, we could make some recommendations and try and influence the Department of Health in their guidelines, because we earlier had discussions with the Office of Sport and listened to their quarterly updates, and they said we very much have to go on what the health guidelines are. And so they said we can't really do much more than that. So there was discussion amongst the sports on how can we work with them to try and give them some recommendations that they can take into account when they're handing down those restrictions. The major concerns from the sport centred around how we were going to work back in a staged fashion to sport. When will sport actually know the processes? If we, because we wanted some feedback, which in the quarterly meetings that have been held with the minister, etc., they couldn't give any guidelines on how we're coming back to sport, because the health department in their guidelines hadn't given them any guidelines either. And then we thought, well, what worked last year? And we talked about attendance numbers and the restrictions, etc., etc. So it was all aimed at bringing a prompt and efficient return to sport and coming up with some recommendations that we could put in a letter to both departments. So it was drawing on last year's consultation with the SSOs, and there are a number of considerations as I've discussed. The major participatory winter sports, we wanted to ensure that they'd already were having discussions themselves, trying to work collaboratively towards how, if we, with the current restrictions, which at the current time, and even though it looks doubtful at the moment, was supposed to end at the end of this month, how we would come back to sport. And the major field sports that had discussions around, they would agree to end their seasons at the end of September. And they were going to looking to put an MOU together with the summer sports, that this could be done in a collective fashion so that they could then brief local government, who always at the end of have all that organisation that they need to do with their fields, etc., moving from the winter season to the summer season. So they effectively, the winter sports were asking for a 2-week extension so they could get their seasons finished, wrapped up, without really interfering with the summer season. So they're looking at trying to get that MOU done, and obviously the main sport that it would impact would probably be cricket. So it would be the major football codes and how they impact with the cricket season. But netball, athletics, touch were all involved. So it was a really good collaborative discussion. The main things that they mentioned that worked really well last year were the 4 square metre rule. They thought that was the best way, that in terms of recommendations, that if you're going to work out how many people can be at a ground or at a venue, use that 4 square metre rather than set arbitrary limits of how many people can be. So, I mean, as you remember last year, there were arbitrary limits put in some places. They were suggesting that just stick at go up to 5,000, which is the limit depending on the size of the venue, and stay with that. They also were mentioning, if this extension, which probably now looks quite possible with the way the numbers have been going, it extends beyond the 30th of July. There was generally an appetite mentioned by all the sports that it would be almost too hard, given that you've got to have, especially with anyone over 15, some training time to bring them back to sports, that most of them were saying that they'd abandon their seasons. And if that was the case, there'd be some significant financial implications for all the associations, clubs, etc., given that, one, there'd probably be people seeking financial compensation. There would be the loss of revenue because sponsors would be saying, well, they couldn't continue with their sponsorship possibly because they hadn't been able to advertise during half the season. There'd be loss of barbecue and canteen revenue, all of these things. So effectively the recommendations that from that group that we came up with, and have since been put in a letter which was sent to both Minister Ward and Minister Hazzard last Friday, were one, that we wanted to utilise the capacity density measurement of 1 person per every 4 square metres to determine the number of persons allowed in any one space. We wanted to keep the maximum capacity restrictions are currently in the public health orders, which is 5,000 persons in a COVID-safe outdoor gathering. We recommended that if there were real hotspots, based on last year where there was real difficulty in governance in trying to take certain teams out, etc., basically to rule that certain LGAs were excluded from which would automatically take certain teams out if that was considered a real hotspot, and as a kind of last resort, take them out of competitions. A return of all age groups at once, rather than the last year where they tried to bring back different age groups at different times. It was just considered too hard for most clubs and associations. Most of them considered that it really depended, the clubs and associations and volunteer models really dependent on both coming back at the same time. And there was a recommendation that the mask requirements stay in place as a safety measurement once sport comes back, so that if you've got, other than the players, once they start participating, everyone has to wear masks. Now, given the Delta variant seems to be, and based on today's numbers, it still seems to be growing, and the Premier's mentioned that there may be more restrictions, and you get the all the experts saying that we may need to go into a lockdown till at least early September. We also ask that they take into consideration financial compensation based around what was done last year, and so that it could be passed on to the clubs and associations, so that some form of discounts and rebates could be administered. And Sport New South Wales has volunteered to assist in the collation of which sports and which really need that compensation. It's not right across the board, but it's, for instance, most of the summer sports will not be impacted if we can get back in time. So rest assured that, from a Sport New South Wales perspective and from all the sports, major winter sports, there's been an effort to influence how we can return to sport, and they're cognizant of what the impact it's happening on all sports. And Kieran Lindop, the CEO of Athletics, was involved in those discussions. And so letters have gone to both ministers for consideration. But at the end of the day, it really the decisions, we've asked them to consider these recommendations when they're making decisions, but it will really come back to what the health department, the guidelines that they provide to the pandemic cabinet on what sport will look like when it returns. And I know it's very hard, it's uncertain. Everybody's waiting, as I do, probably for the 11 o'clock broadcast to see what's happening. And we can all work together, and we will continue to be working with the Office of Sport. And I have had many discussions with Karen Jones, and she briefed the Minister ahead of time that the sports would be seeking some form of compensation package. And we've been also passing on details about the financial assistance that's already out there that can be applied for in terms of emergency grant funding or small business emergency funding that's out there already. But I think that's as much as I can update you in these uncertain times, and hopefully that's been helpful. And Sport New South Wales will be working with all the sports to try and make sure we can come back, because we realise that sport is such an integral part of the New South Wales community, and it's really important that we all look after ourselves, especially the mental health of all of our volunteers, coaches, etc., because it's been a really uncertain time. I hope that was helpful.
Thanks, Ross, and thanks for taking the time on your Monday night to join us. Appreciate you giving that update. I was in the call with some of the small sports last week when you did the drop-in. drop-in session, and that was really great and valuable to just hear how some of the other sports are dealing with it as well. So thank you for putting on those sessions, but also joining us tonight.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Okay, so moving on. I am sitting down in my freezing cold garage, by the way, so if you can hear my teeth chattering as I go through this presentation, that's why. But I will now hand to Millie Reid. So as I said, she's from the Australian Sports Foundation, which with some really great fundraising information that I'm sure you will all find very interesting and useful. Thanks, Millie.
Thanks, Beck, and hello, everyone. Let me see if I can get this shared. Perfect. Alrighty. Special shout out to anyone if they're on the line from Coughs or Whoopee. I started my little A's there, and that was great fun. Dad learnt pretty quickly he could vicariously live through me for shot put and take advantage of my height in high jump and long jump pretty quickly. So let me just get this up and running for you guys. Alrighty, so as Beck said, I'm from the Australian Sports Foundation and I am one of the fundraising managers. So I was originally dedicated to New South Wales and WA, and we've recently just done a bit of a restructure and moving from a state-based system to a sport-based system. The Australian Sports Foundation, in essence, are an online tax-deductible fundraising platform specifically designed for sport. So what that means is we bring clubs like yours onto our platform. We set you up with a fundraiser that generates a unique code of which you can then distribute to your community to bring in tax-deductible donations. When someone contributes to you via that URL, they receive a tax receipt for their contribution, exactly like they would if they were giving to the Australian Red Cross or Vinnie's or other charities. We work across a few primary areas, but the one I'm going to talk to you tonight is around the fundraising platform because that's most relevant to you. As a business, we also try to advocate for sport. We've recently done 2 major surveys around the impact of COVID on community sport and individual athletes. I don't need to tell you guys how much of a struggle it's been for community sport in the last 2 years. At the best of times, most clubs run on the smell of an oily rag, let alone when you've got a pandemic stopping or halting operations. It's exactly the same with individual athletes that might be coming through your clubs. If they've got travel costs or they've got pathways that they're trying to become an athlete through, COVID had a really significant impact on their ability to do so. We also have our charitable arm. What that means is sport isn't traditionally considered a charity, but through our charitable arm, you can register certain projects to get charitable status. The easiest way to explain of why that's a benefit is it opens you up to a whole new world of funding that sport traditionally couldn't get access to. The reason we exist, I think, is these 2 figures. Sponsorship in Australia is a $735 million market. Philanthropy and your fundraising potential is $10 billion. We were originally set up by the Sports Commission, but we are an independent not-for-profit. And all we're trying to do is to help community clubs like yours get a piece of that $10 billion pie through efficient and streamlined fundraising. Sport at the moment receives less than 0.5% of that $10 billion. I always like to show this for 2 reasons. One is to emphasize that regardless of when your sport is, whether it's summer, winter, individual, team, you can have a positive effect and you can make some money with tax-deductible fundraising all year round. If you're doing nothing else, I encourage you to set something up around May, June for end of financial, for the simple reason that tax is at the front of everyone's mind. We receive over 50% of the total year's donation in May, June alone. So the financial year just gone, clubs were able to raise just over $50 million that came through our tax deductible platform. There's a really big misconception in this space that tax deductible fundraising only works for the pro clubs or the national bodies that have the rich people who are capable of giving large amounts of money. So I always try and show you some fundraising success stories of clubs at a community level to show that it doesn't matter what size you are, how many members, what your population is in the local community, you have a capacity to fundraise and to be successful at it as long as you're willing to do it. In terms of the type of things you can fundraise for, it's a really broad scope that comes into anything under the development of sport. It can be new uniforms, new equipment, new clubhouse or facility builds. If you need to upgrade for female change rooms, disability access. If you want to bring in specialist coaching and you don't have the funds to pay for that. If you have travel costs that are needed. Whatever it is that helps your club operate and develop as a sport, it can be fundraised for. These guys, Charlton Park, have a local population of 6,000 and they needed 4.2 million. They had a multitude of different initiatives, which included government grants, some offline fundraising in the traditional forms, but they also joined and registered with us. With us, they did an end of financial year community appeal, and they also did some more targeted fundraising, which we'll get to in a minute. They raised $200,000 through us. They also raised $20,000 in the Play for Purpose raffle, which I encourage you all to Google. And then the rest was made up with government grants. But that's $200,000 that they wouldn't have been able to raise without being able to offer tax deductibility as an option. This is Valley Aquatic Club. The club has around 98 members. We set them up on the platform a little bit differently in what we call a community style project. What this allows you to do is the club owns a parent project, and then whether it's an individual or team, we set them up with unique sub-projects. That way, they can go out and be advocates for their fundraising themselves. Valley Aquatic decided to do it via a challenge. So they asked every kid who wanted to be a part of it to come up with something they wanted to achieve in the month of August. We issued them their unique URLs, and that allowed them to go out to their family members, neighbours down the road, parents, businesses, whoever it was, to collect donations in order to achieve their goal for August. Think of it as an old school readathon, but you're doing it for your club instead. All the money comes back to the club to be used for that central cause. So that's a different way of setting up your online fundraiser, but it works really well if you want to set your challenges. If you do have individual athletes who need to raise funds for team travel costs, competition costs, or if you want to get your actual membership base more involved in the fundraising. They raised just over $3,500 across 107 individual donors. What that emphasizes is you don't need one or two donors to give you a lot or big sums of money. Fundraising can work really successfully by a lot of people giving a little amount. So in its simplest form, how does it work? First step is you need to register with us. That's free to do. You need an ABN and an incorporated number or an ACN. If you don't have those, there are ways that we can still bring you on the platform so you can still use our benefits. It just takes an extra step. If you are already registered with us, you can log in and click Launch a Fundraising Campaign. That takes around 20 to 30 minutes on a prompt by prompt, and that'll help set you up with your actual landing page. Once we approve that page, we issue you with a URL, and that URL can then be distributed throughout your community. The next step from there, and where we get really involved, is to work with you to come up with the fundraising ideas and initiatives of how you can bring that money in. So that might be social media campaigns, it might be targeted campaigns or targeted fundraising to certain people, it might be talking to your local businesses. We work with you to find out what works with your community and your resources. I can see there's a couple of questions popping up, so I'll get to them at the end, guys. I find one of the biggest barriers to people taking on fundraising is they don't know how to ask for a donation, because the mentality is that you're asking for something for nothing. In terms of identifying your donors, a great way to do it is what I call having a whiteboard session. Sit down with your parents group, your committee, your board, your executives, whoever it might be that help you run that club, and have a look at what resources you already have. Your resources don't necessarily have to be people who's good with social media to help you run that side of it. You could have someone who's well connected in small businesses. You could have someone with fundraising experiences who knows how to write some marketing material. Find out what your club have, parents, kids, people in the committee. Make a list of that so you can bolster your fundraising effort. From there, start having to think about certain groups that might have capacity to donate to you. Do you have a parents and supporters club? Do you have a strong local community that might want to get behind you? Are there certain local businesses that might want to contribute who don't need a sponsorship? Once we create those target groups, we can work with you to match a fundraising strategy for those target groups. It might be as simple as you want to do one blanket social media campaign and that's it. That's perfectly okay. Or you might want to do a little bit more detailed where you break those people up. Simple things to include in the ask. The biggest difference between fundraising and how you might approach a business transaction is the personalization and the emotion that you put into it. You all work in little athletics and sport in the community because you understand the benefit that those clubs provide away from the sport and away from the field. They're the kind of stories and the passion that you want to incorporate into your fundraising strategy. Be clear on what you want the money for. Donors want to know where their money is going. A lot of the time when I'm talking to clubs and I ask how much you're looking to raise, and their answer is as much as possible. That's not specific enough. If you know you need 3 sets of new uniforms for your juniors to not wear hand-me-downs and you know their unit cost, do the math and come up with a specific figure. If you're doing clubhouse upgrades and you know that that's going to cost $30,000, that's your target. If donors know where their money is going, they're able to emotionally and have a tangible attachment to that outcome, they're more likely to give. You need to explain how their donation is going to make a difference to the club. Think of the consequences beyond where the money is actually going towards. If you're buying new uniforms for your juniors, what do those new uniforms represent? Does that mean that they're getting brand new uniforms? Does that mean you can increase participation, increase your safety? Is it that you can offer activities for a minority group or more female inclusiveness? Have a think beyond what they're fundraising for, and what the impact and outcome of that donation is. Use human stories. All community clubs have them, and we all know about great people in our club that work tirelessly and often for free to make sure that club ticks along. If you've got players, coaches, volunteers, any kind of human story allows that connection. Make sure you tell those stories in your marketing and communication. All of this results in them wanting to give, and they want to feel good about giving. So what that means is when you come to ask for a donation, you're not asking something for nothing. You're making them feel good about contributing to the broader community and to your club. The important part about asking, especially when it's in written communication, is you have to have a call to action. It's great to tell the story, but unless you end that with, please donate today, any donations over $2 is tax deductible, unless you put in a call to action, people won't actually action what they want to do. They'll sit there and say, I know I want to help. How do I help? Really quick note on corporate and businesses, because they can also donate. The key difference between a donation and a sponsorship is a sponsorship is a set contract where you are negotiating for them to give you X, for you to give A, B, C in return. However, we can work with you to come up with an acknowledgement or thank you strategy for corporates. The main reason I mention this, especially at a community level, is because a lot of the sponsorship packages that you're putting together are donations in essence, because they're not actually getting their value for money. They're giving because they just want to support the club. So rather than struggling to come up with a package, because there's only so many places that you can put a logo on a shirt, on a short, there's only a certain level of exposure they're going to get by having that little athletics on the home ground. Rather than going through that effort, you come up with a really emotive and relation-based proposal. They still get a tax deduction exactly like they would with a sponsorship. They can still get acknowledgement and a thank you, but it saves the effort of coming up with that contract and that A for B. A couple of ways that you can think about fundraising. So it's not just a straight ask. You could add on donations. So you can add on a tax deductible donation to your registrations, to any events that you might go throughout the year, or any other ticketed thing that you might be doing, merchandise, for instance. What that means is people already in the payment process, and they can choose to add on a donation before they check out. Donor legacy programs work really well if you've got a strong supporter group, especially if you've got any alumni or people who have been around the club, or maybe the club has a rich history. What that means is people turn that legacy and turn the love for the club into a financial contribution, and in return, they might get their name on a wall. They might get a competition named after them. They might get the high jump mat named after them. You can come up with certain little recognition pieces to say thank you for their contribution. It's not just cash. We also accept the donation of goods and property. That can be in the way of equipment, uniforms, anything secondhand that you might be getting, gym equipment, sporting memorabilia. We can have a discussion on a one-on-one if the donation of goods and property is of interest to you, to see whether it's eligible. Buy a brick campaigns are really specific to facility and clubhouse upgrades, and that's when community members can donate and they get their name onto a tangible part of the build. And like I said, if nothing else, you can always just run an end of financial year campaign around April, May to capitalise on it being June 30. Really quickly, this is one of the simplest things in fundraising, but I find the most important, thanking your donors. All your reports are available on our portal when you get an account with us to see who's donated, how much and when. It is crucial that you thank them. not only is it polite, but statistically and in research, it shows that they are more likely to give again when asked, or they're more likely to give more. This doesn't have to be an expensive thank you. It's as simple as sending out an email, giving them a quick phone call, or a shout out on social media. To give you an idea of the kind of resources we have, we've got complete toolkit and resource templates, which means if you can't think of how to write or what the language is, we have templates where you can simply pop in your club's details and they're ready to go. We've got posters, social media, and EDMs and emails. If you're interested, you can sign up with the Sports Foundation from the website below there on the slide. It's free to register and it's free to create a project. The way the fees work, if you like, is we withhold 5% only when you start bringing donations in. So if you get a $100 donation, we hold on to $5. We give you back the 95. All right, let's see if there's any questions.
I don't think there are any specifically at the moment, Millie.
Great.
But if anyone would like to add any questions in there, that even if you think of them after Millie's come off this call, then please still do pop them in there and we will touch base with her tomorrow and we'll come back with any answers that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll send around my details, but also we have a dedicated team which are solely for the purpose of getting community level clubs up and running. So I'll send their details around as well.
Great, thank you, and thanks for joining us tonight. I think sometimes when you hear Australian Sports Foundation, it sounds like it's at the top end, but it's great to know that they're here to support community clubs as well all the way through. So I think that was really valuable insight into what you're able to provide our centres. So thanks, Millie.
No worries. And just to Daniel's question, yeah, there are. We've got a couple across Australia. Oh, I heard someone say my name, I think, at some point.
Oh, that's just me. Sorry, Millie, the host.
Oh, no worries. No worries. Have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, Millie. Now, while Em just changes over the host function, we'll welcome Kimmy, who's here from Kohls, who's going to give us an update on the initiatives that are happening over the next couple of months. Thanks, Kimmy.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. I hope your night's been going well. Obviously, would love to have been seeing everyone in person, and I'm sure you guys are on the same boat. So I hope everyone's keeping safe during lockdown. And that you guys will get out of it fairly shortly. Look, without further ado, I'll jump into my presentations because I know it's going to be a long night for some of you guys. So I just wanted to give you an overview of where the Kohls partnership with Little Athletics is at, reflect on some of the highlights that we had last year, but also give you guys some concrete dates and plans around our activations with centres and state bodies this year, and hopefully get you guys enthusiastic and applying for some of those opportunities, particularly our grants, which I'm sure is a nice segue from what you've just heard from the ASF. I'm just going to, share my screen. And I've just got my fingers crossed that everything will hold up with my broadband for the next 5 to 10 minutes. So as I said, I'm just here to give you a very brief overview of what we've achieved to date and some of the opportunities for the upcoming 2021-22 season, including the banana donations, which a lot of you guys are involved with. As I mentioned, our Kohls Little Athletics Community Fund. We have also set some dates for Kohls Community Round, which I know a lot of centres in New South Wales earlier this year participated in. We also want to give an update on our Kohls Little Athlete of the Month /year. It's changed a bit from last year. And we've got some exciting merchandise opportunity for centres this year. So I'll just jump straight into an overview of what we've achieved to date. As many of you know, last year we announced that we were extending partnership with Little Athletics for another 2 years. So it takes us to the end of this season or financial year, a little bit over the financial year actually, and it would take our partnership to 5 years. Our banana donations, we've donated 3.6 million bananas. And we've connected over 350 supermarkets with about 400 centres that take part in that. So centres that are within a 50-kilometre radius of Kohls.
Kimmy,
yes.
sorry, we just can't see your screen at the moment. It hasn't come across as screen sharing.
How's that? It's sorry, me bad.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me know. I actually, when I press full screen mode, I can't see what else pops up. So thanks for letting me know. You've just missed some pretty pictures, that's all. Yeah, so our Kohls Little Athletics Community Fund, we've funded 376 centres have received grants to the value of $1.68 million. And we've also invested over the years in some merchandise with clubs such as the marquees, shopping baskets and caps and drink bottles for kids as well. So what we're looking to do this year with our banana donations is essentially keep it the same as what we've done last few years now. We are almost replicating the exact dates of the donation periods as last year. So it'll start on the 22nd of September. Fingers crossed everything's going well in New South Wales, and you, a lot of you guys can start when you start the banana donations when your season starts in September. We have a bit of a Christmas break from the 14th or the 15th of December to the 11th of January. So that period's a very busy time for our stores in particular. So we have negotiated over the years to go into a bit of December and January, which if you guys were around in the first year, you'll know that that was, we had 2 months off. So yeah, so we do request that the centres stick with the donation periods. It just makes us our communications to stores a lot easier to manage. Each centre will get that are eligible will get their banana coupon books again, and we'll mail that out to the centres directly as per the last couple of years. The main message with that is please make sure that you provide the correct delivery address when asked. So I will liaise with Little Athletics New South Wales to get those contacts to me, and yeah, we just need to make sure that it's a delivery address, not a PO box that we can send it out to, because we do it via courier. And we will be hopefully reaching an exciting milestone in the second half of the season. Hopefully we'll reach 4 million bananas donated to Little Athletics since September 2017. Our Kohls Little Athletics Community Fund will open in 6 days, sorry. It'll open on Sunday, the 1st of August officially. All that information, guidelines and FAQs are already up on the fund webpage, which is the www.kohls.com.au/Little Athletics Fund. And the application form, the official round 6 application form, will be uploaded this week before Sunday. So keep an eye out on it. I think it'll be uploaded on Wednesday or Thursday, but yeah, definitely by Friday it will be up. You'll need to just make sure that the form, you fill out your new application on the round 6 form. All the questions, if you've done it before, are almost identical to the previous rounds. So if you have applied before, it should be a fairly straightforward process. My advice around the applications, firstly, don't leave it till the last minute. If you do it within the first 2 to 3 weeks, we do have the capacity to read each application form and go back to you with feedback. For example, if you forgot to attach a quote or you've applied for something that's an ineligible item, we can go back to you and suggest to you to reapply or to change your items. If you submit your application forms in the very last week or on the very last day, there's no capacity whatsoever for us to provide that ongoing feedback to you. The other thing that we find that's a common mistake by centres is they forget to upload an official quotation from a supplier. So that's the key things we need are the application form filled out and a quotation from the supplier you intend to purchase the equipment from. Besides that, it's a fairly straightforward process, as I said before. The other thing that I would also mention and give you guys a heads up, last year we distributed over $500,000. It was our largest single round of grants ever, over 5 rounds. We definitely won't be able to distribute that much this year. So it's going to be a bit more competitive, and we will continue like we have in the first 5 rounds to prioritise centres that have never received a grant from us before. So if you are one of those centres, I would strongly encourage you to have a look at the grant, to have a look at the application guidelines and consider applying for a grant. That's not to say if you've received a grant before or even 2 grants from us before, you won't be eligible. You won't. You have to be in it to win it, basically. So even if you've been successful before, don't let that rule you out of applying, because it all just depends on who else has applied around the country. The Kohl's Community Round was something that we initiated in February this year. So it was a very successful program that we took nationally from Tasmania, and it allowed us to connect local stores with their local little athletic centres and really celebrate the partnership. And we were wrapped with the number of centres that got on board and the very creative ways that they showcased the partnership, and the feedback from our store teams that did go out to visit their centres was that they all really loved it and would love to participate again. So hence we are hoping we will run it again this year, and we're hoping to make it bigger and better by giving you the dates in advance. So some of the feedback we received last year was some of you guys didn't know about it, and we take that on board. It was communicated quite late, but hopefully we're giving you the dates now in advance. It'll be from over 10 days from 4th to the 14th of November, which covers 2 weekends. That's the opportunity for you guys to get in the Kohl's Community Round. We'll also, like we did last year, provide pre-registered centres with 10 by $10 Kohl's e-gift cards that you guys can hand out as spot prizes on the day for best dressed, or if you're running a Kohl's relay or banana relay, you might give it to the winning kids. And another thing that was really popular last year and we'll replicate again this year is the novelty selfie frame. So we'll send that out to the pre-registered centres. And each state will continue to encourage to run some social media competitions for further centre prizes. The Kohl's Little Athlete of the Month was another new initiative last year. We introduced in December and ran throughout every month until May, culminating in the Kohl's Little Athlete of the Year award, which every state there were 2 kids from every state that were rewarded that. So this award, I have to stress, is not a achievement award. It's more about recognising kids that have done something unique in terms of sportsmanship or leadership, and they've been rewarded for the values and behaviours rather than a performance or ability. So we had kids ranging from, I think there was one kid in under 7s right up to under 16s that won the awards last year. And it was as simple as kids that may have demonstrated leadership because they set out the cones every week, or they help with the tiny tots, or they help out in the canteen. Or there was a really good story of a kid in WA that was one of the national winners who was nominated by the parents of another kid, not even from the same centre. They were at the Northwest Championships in WA, and the parent just noticed how this kid, the kid that won, was always encouraging of her son that had fallen over in one race, but always went back to check on him throughout the day. So those are the type of values and behaviours we want to reward with this. Instead of doing it over 5 months, what we're going to do is just focus it in February, so it becomes the little athlete, Kohl's Little Athlete of the Year, rather than of the month, which then culminates into the year award. So by having it in February, it allows for all those stories to be recognised that could have taken place from throughout the season. And it's a Facebook competition that Little Athletics and each of the state bodies help us run. So the same mechanism in terms of just posting a photo of the kid, telling us in a few words what they did, and why they should be considered, and tagging in Kohl, I think it was Kohl CLATM, or Kohl's Little Athlete of the Month. So we'll work out a hashtag and we'll communicate what that is, and that's as simple as it is. It can be, you can nominate as a centre on the kids, or parents can nominate. We had a few parent nominations last year. As I mentioned before, the kid from WA as an example, you can nominate a kid from another centre that you may have noticed having done something amazing. So it is quite open to who can nominate. We received 171 nominations last year, and each of those kids, monthly winners, received a $25 gift card. But this year we're just going to focus on the 2 per state and make it a significant prize that hopefully will encourage you guys to nominate kids for, and obviously recognise them for their great sportsmanship as well. This is the most important thing about this competition. The merchandise opportunities this year will be a similar process to the last 2 years, where it's been an opt-in process, essentially first come, first serve. We have the EDM that we send out occasionally throughout the season to all centre contacts across Australia, informing centres of upcoming opportunities such as grants, banana donations, etc. And one of those EDMs will provide that opportunity for centres to fill out a form to receive some merchandise for their centres. So it will. So in the previous years, we've offered things like the shopping baskets, volunteer vests. We've also had aprons and a few bits and pieces like that. This year, what we're going to do is offer centres the co-branded pack. So the items in the pack will be 2 aprons, 2 by 20 metre bunting, which I know a lot of centres use bunting just to rope off certain areas. There'll also be the volunteer vests, which were quite popular 3 years ago. So we'll throw in 9 of them, 3 different sizes. The tablecloths were another popular items we did 3 years ago, which we will bring back again. Some centres use them to where they put their bananas on. Other centres I've seen actually use them as a media wall, which is quite unique and innovative. And so it's really up to you how you want to use it. They're made of materials that quite easily wipes down for everyone as well. And And we'll also throw in 10 clipboards in there, which I know some centres may like to use them as age group managers for each age group. And we are also offering centres to get some participants t-shirts and hats. The picture there is just a very rough mock-up of what it looks like. We're still working through the artwork, but that's something else to look out for as well for your kids. So in summary, August, Kohl's Little Athletics Community Fund, don't forget, opens on Sunday the 1st, closes 31st of August. Our banana donations will commence on the 22nd of September. We'll send out the coupon books at least 1.5 to 2 weeks in advance. The October, we'll look at doing something throughout Kohl's as a bigger above the line marketing campaign. November, we have the Kohl's Community Round, Kohl's Little Athlete of the Month in February, and hopefully we'll get out to a few state championships like we've done in the last couple of years prior to COVID to activate some banana donations and fruit activations as well. So I'm just conscious of time. You guys have a very tight schedule. I know when I was speaking to Emily, rather than taking questions unless there's something absolutely pressing, Emily's going to share this presentation with everyone. And if there are any questions, there is a dedicated email that we use, which is the communitysport@kohls.com.au, and you can email us at any time and one of our team will get back to you, most likely myself, but Patrick and one of our grads usually have access to that email as well.
That's great. Thank you, Kimmy. And thank you for all the support that Kohl's gives Little Athletics across the country, but in New South Wales, to have over $500,000 donated through the community fund's amazing. And I'm sure those tips and tricks that you've let the centres know will be of great help as well. So, and 4 million bananas, that's a lot of bananas. So very much appreciated. And there is one comment that I can actually see in the chat about how terrific that is and how it helps to build a great relationship with the local Kohl's staff as well. So very much appreciated. So just moving into the last part of our presentation tonight, which is an update from Little Athletics New South Wales. This will probably take about 20 minutes. So I'm conscious that it's 7:30 already and that was our close time. There's probably a few people sweating on getting in front of the television to see the swimming tonight. But as we go through, please feel free to add anything into the chat and we'll obviously come back to you either tonight or answer any questions over the coming days. So you may have seen, I'm sure a lot of you spent, a couple of hours doing a full read of our annual report that we put out recently. That there has been some changes to the strategic priorities of Little Athletics New South Wales. Some of them have remained the same. Some of them have simplified to make them, I guess, more relevant and easier to understand. So I won't go into it in a lot of detail, but that's just a slide of it there. And if you dump into the annual report, and you'll be able to find a little bit more information there as well. Things like support and educate our members, strengthen our position to achieve our purpose were previously in the strategic priorities. We have included them offering comprehensive and innovative products. It's really something that we really aim to do so over the winter with things like the Fun Run and some of the other carnivals that we put on, and we want to really take that to the next level. Grow and develop athletics is obviously a key principle, and I guess the biggest change is that provider device product offering, which is that last one in there that you can see really starts to talk about the framework of athletics from tiny tots to masters. I'm just having a problem moving to the next one. We have had some changes in our staff that I just wanted to make you aware of. So Emily Brunton, who you may know as Emily Jordan, who was previously a zone coordinator, has come on board as our partnership and participation manager. So doing a great job looking after our partners, and I'll talk a little bit more about them further on in the presentation. as well as in our participation. And I think she's going to show us a little video at the conclusion that they've done in around the tiny tots, and there's a lot of resources coming out about that age group in particular. Steph has come on board supporting Emily in the participation space as our participation coordinator. Some of you may be aware that Jess has just gone on maternity leave as of last Friday, so we're waiting with anticipation for to hear when Bub arrives. And Daniel Warren actually started today, and I think I've seen Daniel's online tonight, so thank you, Daniel, for joining us on your first day. I'm sure you've had a lot of information already, so he is coming on a 7-month contract to cover Jess's maternity leave. So everyone in region 4, Daniel will be getting in contact with you very, very soon. We've also changed Alvin's and Yusuf's roles slightly. So they were working, Alvin, across schools and Yusuf across clinics and camps, and their roles changed to mirror more what happens in the regional areas, with Alvin overseeing regions 5 and 6 and Yusuf regions 7 and 8. So they're important points of contact for you as well. In terms of registration, so last week there was some game day training and support sessions. So that support will continue. The team has started going through centres that haven't gone in and started to put in their products so that they can be live from the 2nd of August, and they're going to start contacting and giving everyone a phone call who's in that case, because we can actually do that from our end as well and provide as much support as you require. The portal will be available and ready to go on the 2nd of August. I know there's some regional centres in particular who are very keen to kick off, that I know finished before Christmas or leading into Christmas. So it will be available. Obviously, there'll be some centres that maybe aren't looking to open on the 2nd, so we'll work with you all individually on that. Beck Newton did send out an email last week just to remind everyone to go onto the government site and fill out the COVID safety plan, and that will allow you to access the Service New South Wales QR code. So really important that you do get that code. So we won't be doing the ones that we did through the EVA service last time. Service New South Wales wasn't ready for us last year when the QR codes came in, so we did do that service internally here. However, their advice is they want everyone to move on to that Service New South Wales QR platform. Registration packs, we have everything ready for the registration packs. The slight problem is we have quite a lot of staff, including myself, that actually live in the hard lockdown areas. So packing them is becoming a bit of a challenge, but it is something that we will work through a process over the coming weeks and get those registration packs out to you as soon as we can. So unfortunately, there's 4 of us in the hard lockdown areas, and it's looking likely from some of the cases today that there may be more of us before too often. Dual memberships with Athletics New South Wales, there's a little bit of a change of process. So if you have gone into the game day platform and had a look at the registration form and the questions that Little Athletics New South Wales has put in there, your participants who are aged under 12 to under 17 now have the option to opt into their dual membership through that platform. So there's a question that explains what the dual membership is. And if they tick yes, that will allow us to activate providing their data to Athletics New South Wales. When Athletics New South Wales portal is then open, they will send an email link that will allow the participant to complete the process. So it's just going to allow a bit more of a smooth transition for those athletes that wish to take up that dual membership option. In terms of competitions, I think we're all aware that the state cross country has been postponed. Obviously, the 1st of August that was scheduled for, and that's just not possible. And on the weekend, you would have seen, or perhaps seen, that the National Cross Country Championships, which was scheduled for the 21st and 22nd of August in Adelaide, has also been postponed. So Athletics Australia and Little Athletics Australia are both working together on to see whether there's an alternative date that event can go ahead. So it's not a cancellation at this stage, it is a postponement. Cheryl Webb, who is looking after our competitions now following the retirement of Di, is busy finalising the last dates for the zone and regional championships, and she reported this morning in our staff meeting that we're just about there, so a couple more dates to come in and we'll be able to send out that that schedule of championships. And there is the major change to the competition calendar for 2021-22, which was communicated last week. So the Little Athletics State Track and Field Championships will push back to the 2nd and 3rd of April. The reason for that is that the Athletics Australia National Track and Field, which is scheduled to be in Perth, will be earlier in the calendar for next year. So that will start on the 19th of March, which would be the traditional weekend that we would host state championships. So rather than putting the additional pressure on our officials and also having our athletes have to choose which event they want to participate in, then we have changed that date to allow for them to go to Perth and come back in time to then participate in the state championships and support our officials as well. I can just see a question there about zone and regional championships going back to the old way. I'll answer that while I'm here. Yes, that is the intention for zone and regional. Obviously, we find ourselves in circumstances now that are a little bit different to when that decision was made prior to this current COVID situation, but that is certainly what we're working towards. Zone and regional championships to return to the way they were, and state championships to go back to the one combined weekend with all the age groups. From a marketing perspective, there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes for marketing. So we have put together a centre support marketing kit for every centre. They include posters and flyers, which are personalised with your centre, your location of your centre, and what day you're participating on. Those all arrived on Emily's driveway on Friday because we couldn't have them delivered to the office. So she will now put those together and will focus on the regional centres who are able to go out and start their seasons probably more promisingly than our metro centres over the coming week or so. You'll also find in there a USB that has additional assets, which includes the posters and flyers in case you wanted to produce more. There's social media assets and school newsletter with a nice typo on there, sorry. School newsletter templates as well. Some centres have also been emailed the social media assets in particular, and we're more than happy to do that. I have seen them starting to pop up on the various social sites, which is fantastic. It's lovely to see that consistency. And in as many cases as possible, the team, which was Laura, Steph and Emily, we used photos from your centres, so they are personalised for your use. From a state perspective, we also have a marketing campaign kicking off, and that'll happen mid next week during the athletics week of the Olympics. So you can see there's some regional Prime 7 advertising happening. We've got some metro radio. We've had a digital advertising campaign that will kick off. Spotify will utilise, obviously. Lots of people out exercising in twos at the moment, listening to things like Spotify. So it has really good cut through. We'll use our own channels. We'll tap into our partners. And we have the EDM and text message facilities as well. Knowing that there may be a delay in opening registrations in some areas, we have set up on our website a register your interest option. So we already have over 1,000 and we haven't really pushed that very hard at all. But 1,000 people who have actually registered their interest to join a Little Athletics Centre. So with this marketing campaign kicking off, we think that will grow immensely. So yes, it's all very much not necessarily go and sign up at your centre, but jump on the website and register your interest so that we know we can capture those details and retarget them once we have more certainty in what's happening with the season ahead. It will be a landing page also created on the website, which will have all your centre details and then your links through to game day. So that'll become an important platform once this registrations do actually open. We're doing some work behind the scenes also on the layout of the website. So the website, it really should be targeting our new and existing participants and our parents and our volunteers. And that's why we created the resource hub to sit alongside that, which is more targeted at our centres. So you may see that different information is moving around the website at the moment as we try and create them for their targeted audiences. If you're on the resource hub though, and you think there should be something that should be there that's not there, then if you could reach out and please let us know, because we really want to build that into a really valuable resource that centres are actually using. And the awards, we obviously we're looking forward to our gala evening to present our awards for the 50th year last weekend, and that didn't happen. So, but thank you to everyone who submitted their nominations. We were actually really overwhelmed with how many nominations we received, and we set up a committee that included a representative from Sports New South Wales to go through all those nominations and select our finalists. You may have seen on our social media, we have started to roll out the finalists. So we've done 2 at the moment, Volunteer of the Year and Innovative Centre of the Year, and now continue to roll out over the coming weeks. And we are still hopeful that at some stage we may be able to run a dinner or some form of award ceremony that we can recognise the finalists and then also announce our winners. A quick update on our partners. So McDonald's is back on board for the 20th year in the 2021-22 season. So we'll celebrate that milestone with some different activities over the season. Their certificates have returned the same as they were this year in the registration packs. So that is the 1 certificate per child, and you can choose how you would like to use those certificates if you want to save them to the end of the year, or you've got a specific event you want to use them for. So McDonald's isn't set on how that happens, but just so you know, they're not the ones prior that they were kind of that weekly reward system. And we really encourage that if any of your centres haven't reached out to your local franchise yet, then you do. So seeing some really valuable local partnerships be formed with your individual franchise owners that can add a lot more benefit than what, from a localised perspective, than what we're getting from them in addition to from a state level. Kumon has provided PV books that will be in your registration pack. So every child who is registered will receive a PV book. So that'll all be sent out with your bibs and all the other resources. RH Sport is doing a presentation tomorrow night. So if you haven't signed up for that yet, then please do. They'll go through some of their products that they have available. And Valor Sport, you may have seen, have come on board recently as our compression partner, and we're doing some pretty exciting work with them in terms of Little Athletics New South Wales designed garments, and we will be reaching out to some centres and athletes to test those. They really want to take us on the journey with them to produce those garments and make sure that they're really valued across our Little Athletics community. And we have our 3 community partners. So everyone will be aware of the Ronald McDonald House Greater Sydney partnership that we've had for some time. That will continue, and there'll be some initiatives that we share with you in the coming weeks that you'll be able to adopt at your centres. We have also 2 new community partners that we're working with, being Are You OK and Little Wings. So if anyone attended the fun run in Sydney Olympic Park recently for the 50 years, you would have seen Little Wings there with their trailer cooking the barbecue. So 2 new partners who are very enthusiastic and very excited to be on board. Just in terms of what we've got planned over the coming weeks and month or so, because there is the uncertainty around everything, we are going to do some region drop-in sessions. So they will be sessions that we set up for each individual regions, and centres can choose whether they want to drop in to those and have a chat, ask questions. It'll be a bit more informal than a style like this. It'll be, you know, everyone having an opportunity to verbally contribute, not just pop things in the chat. But we think with each region having its own challenges and planning for the season differently, then that is an option that people can come together who are in a like-minded community and have a chat. And then I've got my contact details there, along with Beck Newton, who you all know, wonderful Beck Newton, her centre support manager, and Trish Bryant, who is leading the game day changeover, and any questions that you might have there. But we're all here to help with all that as well. In the regions, don't hesitate to reach out to Adam or Kelly, Daniel now, Alvin and Yusuf. So Kelly came on board in January and is based in Dubbo, and I think most of you would know Adam, who's in Tamworth. And then of course, if you've got any coaching or workforce queries, Darren is here to help you as well. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm just having a quick look. Looks like Em's covered quite a few questions in there, but we will come back to anything that we've missed in that chat and answer those questions for you.